If our children are the seeds and we are their gardeners, how we plant them and the way we tend to them will determine if they reach their full bloom. So we choose to listen to our intuition, focus on connection, and stay deeply rooted in order to make the most of every season in motherhood. We don't have all the answers, and we probably never will. We are learning as they grow. This is our journey, and by sharing our truths, we hope to encourage anyone along the way. Welcome to the Learning as They Grow podcast. Welcome back to this week's episode of Learning as They Grow. I'm your host, Alicia Foster. Today, I'm going to be talking about baby-led weaning. This is one of those kind of silly terms, I think, that you'll come across as a new parent and may just be like, what on earth is that? And baby-led weaning is simply starting solids, having the baby or the infant that's about 6 months or older eating real foods that are in, its raw form, and having them try foods with their own hands rather than spoon feeding, rather than doing purees and mashing it up and things like that. So when I was a new parent, I'm still a new parent. My baby's only 16 months old, but whenever I had an infant, that seems like a lifetime ago already, she started showing interest in our food. And as we sat down to eat, she, was really interested in what we had. And she was sitting up unassisted, I believe around 5 months old. And so these are things that my pediatrician said to look out for. This will kind of give you a sign that she's ready to start eating. So around that time, around 5-6 months, I was like, okay, we're about a month away from really starting foods. I think let me start diving into figuring out baby foods. And I knew for myself, we were not interested in doing store-bought jar food or the pouches, things like that. I just figured I could make it. At my baby shower was given I don't even know the name of it, but it was some sort of, you can steam veggies or fruits and then you can blend it together all in the same contraption. And so I was planning on making homemade purees. I had all the glass jars out. I did do as well, and I still do, the little pouches that I can fill myself. So that was kind of what I had anticipated doing when it came to baby food. However, I started looking into it, started talking with friends who were in a similar stage of parenthood, and they shared with me this whole baby-led weaning world. And as I dove more into it, I thought, let me give this a try. This actually sounds pretty cool. I think my baby would really enjoy this. So that's kind of my background on why I started baby-led weaning. But I figured for this episode, it might be helpful for the listener for me just to break this down into, I think I have 5 simple questions here that might be asked by a first-time baby-led weaning parent. So not just a new parent with one child, but I know people who have multiple children, but 5 years ago or so, this was not something that they had heard about. So this might be new for their second child or their third child. So no matter what stage you're in, these might be some questions that you have when it comes to baby-led weaning. So let's start with pretty simply, what is baby-led weaning? I'm going to read you the exact definition of it. So baby-led weaning, also known as BLW, you might see it as that online. It's a method of introducing solid foods in a baby's diet by allowing them to feed themselves, as opposed to being spoon-fed. So it consists of, like I had said previously, giving baby real foods in their natural form rather than mashing or pureeing the food before serving it to them. And I'll get more into, I say in their natural form, certain foods do need to be steamed or softened or cooked or things like that. So it doesn't mean everything is just raw and you just hand it to the baby, but more so serving it to them one by one in their natural form so that they're actually getting to taste that food, feel the texture of the food, get used to things like that rather than it all being mixed together in a puree form. Textures are all the same in a puree form, and often that can lead to a picky eater because their tongue is not getting used to these different textures. So that leads me to the next common question I think many parents have. Why baby-led weaning? Why would I do that? Why not just go get some purees, or why not just give them purees? Which, if you want to do that, that's totally fine. But let me give you some of the benefits of baby-led weaning. So splitting this into two categories, baby-led weaning, first of all, is very helpful for developmental skills. So it increases their autonomy, being able to have that independence to want to do things a little bit on their own and learning how to do things on their own. And it helps them with their fine motor skills. They get the pincer grasp. I don't remember the exact age, but whenever they get that, they're able to really use that and master it because they're constantly pinching the food. Before that, they'll just be grabbing it with their hands and kind of shoving it to the face. And this is all a process of introducing foods. It's not something that just happens in that first week and you're like, wow, they're actually eating for nutrition. No, in the beginning, they're going to eat to play. They're going to eat to feel. They're going to eat to explore. And that is really helpful to let them do that. It's messy as all get out, but it is so helpful for them because they're learning how to navigate their own skills and being able to just really master these things by doing stuff like eating. So in addition to their fine motor skills being improved, their hand-eye coordination is working out. And that's kind of the funnest part, is when they're trying to figure out how to get it in their mouth, you know, with their hand. Or once they get to spoons and silverware, which this is a whole other thing, I don't think that there's a too early time to introduce this. Some kids will not show an interest in it, but for us, our daughter showed an interest in it by trying to grab at ours. And so we just kind of always had her silverware there available just in case. And then she actually ended up wanting to use her silverware by the time she was 1 or 11 months old. And, you know, we did the whole, try to do like a smash cake. I made a fun, healthy version of a smash cake. And I tried to get her to just like dive into it. But for her, that wasn't anything new. She's like, I've been eating with my hands. This isn't that exciting. Instead, I literally, a friend was like, try giving her a spoon. And I gave her a spoon and she just like dug into her cake with her spoon. So it was just developmentally where she was at. And so, yeah, that's kind of my reason why I'm like, it's never too early to introduce those things. Just have them there in case they're interested in them. What I think we often do as parents is we're just like, oh no, they're not ready for that. It's too young. And so we just don't have those things available for them. And then we wait until what, you know, I can't even remember who it is, but the people who put out the milestones and say, this is where your baby should be at this age. We kind of wait and go, oh, okay, now they're 12 months. Now let me start trying this. I think with anything, whether it's talking about food and silverware and using things with our hands, or motor skills and climbing and using playgrounds and, you know, exploring freely, all of those things, I think if you have it at their availability and allow them to try to start exploring earlier on, it might help them reach those milestones just on their natural time, rather than it being something that is booked and charted. Okay, moving on. Sorry, I get in random little things here. So the next positive benefit regarding developmental skills when it comes to baby-led weaning is that it promotes good eating behavior. So I kind of briefly touched on this earlier, but it is huge. It's a huge thing in the parent world, talking about picky eaters. And something our pediatrician had talked to us early on about was when our daughter got to that stage of wanting to put things in her mouth, food or not food, she was like, don't stop her from putting things in her mouth. Obviously, let's be smart. I'm not going to let my child put rocks in her mouth, things that she can choke on, dog poop, you know, like let's be realistic. But whenever she's putting toys in her mouth, or she was obsessed with leaves for a while, and we have these big leaves in the backyard that are nice and sturdy. I know she's not going to choke on them, and she would just kind of want to nibble on them. And you know, I think a lot of parents are like, oh my gosh, no, she's got something in her mouth. But I'm like, first of all, I'm right here with her. But also our pediatrician made it clear, let her mouth and her tongue explore all those different textures. That's actually going to help her not be a picky eater. So obviously I'm talking about things that are not food related, but that is very clear and same with things that are food related. Like I said earlier, if things are constantly pureed and in the same form, they're going to have a harder time liking things with different textures. I know so many adults, myself included, that it's like, oh, I don't know what it is about whatever, my mother-in-law, for example, is not a fan of dates. And I was like, let me make you these healthy like date desserts. She was like, oh, I just don't like dates. And it was the texture that really weirded her out about it. And so I think a lot of adults do that. And we just unknowingly don't realize that we still have some aversions to food because our tongue never got adjusted to certain textures. So baby-led weaning helps them taste and feel and explore those different textures, and it helps them understand how to regulate their eating when it comes to providing opportunities to have good eating behaviors. When we're spoon feeding a baby, that's on our call of like, how much are we feeding them? Just keep feeding them until they kind of turn their head. And that's a huge thing. They say to not, once they turn their head to something, don't force it. It's helping them regulate how much is enough. When am I full? I need more. Understanding things like that is really helpful. And obviously, you're still their parent. You're still going to have to guide them and model these things for them and show them when, if you just have a child who's like not wanting to eat at all, you're going to have to help them eat. They have to get their nutrition, all of that. But it does help them with the self-regulating, and eating a variety of foods is really good. So early on, people are like, oh my gosh, she likes broccoli, which she doesn't love broccoli anymore. I'll give you that. But she loves carrots. She'll have a carrot in each hand and just like eating them. So in the beginning, I remember somebody's like, she likes broccoli. And I'm like, yeah, we hadn't introduced sugary foods. We introduced fruits that had natural sugars, but we did not introduce any artificial sugars until after 1 year old. And even then, we're still very particular on it. Like, but that helped her taste buds actually enjoy and be accustomed to the natural flavors of fruits and vegetables rather than being filled with these super sweet or super salty flavors. And so she actually was able to enjoy things like broccoli at the time. And now she really loves carrots because they're a little sweeter for her because she's not used to super sweet. So trying out a variety of foods is really helpful. Okay. And the other category of why I think baby-led weaning is so helpful. So you have the developmental skills is why it's helpful and benefits of it. And then the second part is easier meal times. So with baby-led weaning, parents don't have to make separate meals for the baby anymore. You don't have to spend countless hours preparing food for them, pureeing it, making sure it's good and frozen, thawing it out, making sure if you have multiple children or you're cooking just for you and your husband, like here's our meal, here's baby's meal. You don't have to do that with baby-led weaning. So with baby-led weaning, whatever you're making, you can make for the baby. You just kind of give it more in its natural form. So for example, if we're doing, let's say, fried rice for the night, I, in the beginning, would not put any soy sauce and seasoning and stuff like that. I would just mix all the veggies, do the eggs, do the rice, and then I'd make my baby a helping of that on the side. And you can, in the beginning, you want to only introduce one at a time. So I would do the rice in one little portion of her plate, the veggies that were, I was using for that night in the other part, and then the eggs in another part. And so she would get to taste each individual food. And then after I made her little plate, I would pour in the seasoning, pour in the soy sauce, mix it together, and make me and my husband the rest of our food. So we're able to sit down and eat one meal together. And in addition to that being easier for us cooking the meal, it's more beneficial for her to see we are eating the same food, because everyone knows when your kids get to a certain age and they become very aware of, I want what you have. What is this that I have? Like, we need to have the same thing or I'm going to eat yours. And so she doesn't have that issue anymore. And there's been many times when she looks at us and is like, I'm not eating this, but then she sees us eating and, we just are overly dramatic with it. Like, yum, this is so good. And she suddenly will start trying hers, or will pick off of her plate and be like, oh, this is good. I don't think I would really want to do that with a spoonful of puree. So it's nice having her have real foods that I can actually model and enjoy doing too. So these are reasons why baby-led weaning is very beneficial. You have your developmental skills and also easier meal times. Okay, so moving on to the next question. When can you start baby-led weaning? So just like any type of food, introducing food outside of breast milk or formula to a infant, they recommend that the minimum age is 6 months. So that doesn't specifically mean that, oh, 6 months, here it is, we're going to start. I know some friends who push that until later because they wanted their child to get all their nutrition from breast milk rather than other foods just yet. And so that's just the minimum. You know your child best, you know where they're at and what they're ready for. But the three main things that I kind of mentioned earlier to show that your child is ready to start solids or baby-led weaning is they're able to sit up on their own with limited support. So they're going to be in a high chair. So that is a little bit of support around them. So if they're still a little unstable, that's okay if you want to start at that point. But the most important thing is that they're able to have good head control. You don't need a baby bobbling around. They need to be able to have good head control, sit up with limited support, and then showing interest in food and mealtime. Those were the three main things that I learned at the time to look out for. All right. So moving on to what I think is a huge question by many parents in this stage, trying to figure out what their route for starting solids is going to be, is how do I do baby-led weaning safely? This is a big one. I know in the beginning it scared the grandparents of our daughter, so my in-laws and my parents, it scared them with certain foods we were offering her because they're like, oh, she's going to choke. What about this? What about that? And even ourselves, we were like, just wanting to make sure that it was fully safe. And I know multiple people who are like, I'm worried about choking. That's the biggest thing. And you should have a healthy fear of things, being safe for your child. You want to make sure that you're taking all of the, I forget that word. Mom brain is so real, guys. Precautions, that's the word. Make sure you're taking all of the precautions needed to make sure anything you do with your child is safe. So I'm going to go into the quick bullet points that I have. If you want to look back on any of this too, I'm going to have all of this in the show notes. I'll have this on my blog. My blog is fosteringmamabears.com. So I will have all of this in a big spiel on there. Okay, so the most important thing you want to make sure that you're doing when it comes to baby-led weaning is paying attention to the appropriate size and shapes. Okay, I think a lot of people think the smaller the better. Let me just cut everything up really, really, really tiny and that'll be perfect. However, we don't understand just how small their throat or their throat is. So you don't want to just cut something up to what you think is small enough. Rather, you want something to be in a correct size and shape. So I'm going to get into what that means. The correct shape is not always just small circular things. That's actually more dangerous because it just takes one small circular piece of food to get caught in their little bitty throats. So instead, we want to do long, thin cuts of things. And I'll explain more about that in just a second. Let me just go over these quick points of how to safely do baby-led weaning. So first and foremost, removing skins from fruits and vegetables. So giving apples and such, and cucumbers. My daughter loves cucumbers. That was a big one that, I constantly had to have cucumbers on hand. And I made the mistake once of not removing the skin. And she did have to gag it back up. And I was like, I didn't remove the skin. So peeling or whatever it is called, getting the skin off of the fruits and vegetables really quick is really important. Steaming some of those harder foods like broccoli. I mentioned broccoli earlier, or apples. Those things in the beginning, when they don't have a lot of teeth and they're just hitting everything with their gums are actually really strong. They're trying to chomp down on the foods, and that's really helpful. They're actually chewing with their gums, and they'll learn how to regulate that and how to do that. If they don't just put something in their mouth and try to swallow it, they're going to try to mash it around a little bit. And so they recommend having foods that you can easily mush between your two fingers. This will be similar to how it's chewed up with the baby's gum. So if you're trying to squeeze a food between your two fingers and it's not mushing when they have only gums, or even just a couple in the front or the bottom, the top or the bottom of the front, this is not going to be good for them. You want to make sure that it can mush just a little bit. For example, avocado, banana, a steamed apple, the steamed broccoli, and I would chop off a lot of the base. So she would just kind of hold the base and then munch on the head part of the broccoli. All of that's really good and mushy. So you're still giving them the textures, you're still giving them the food as close as possible to its natural form. It is not a full puree, but it is not mushed for them. Instead, they are able to mush it with their gums. So that's in the beginning though. Now my daughter she has 12 teeth. She has a bunch of teeth. And I always joke and think that maybe she had an adaptation that she grew her 4 molars before she grew all of her front teeth. She has her 2 top, 2 bottom, and her lateral incisors on the top, but she didn't grow her bottom lateral incisors until after she grew her molars. And I joke about that, saying, I feel like she adapted and said, I need some molars, because we introduced meat to her around 9 or 10 months. And I would give her, small, thin pieces, and she just loved it. She was getting after some steak, getting some good iron. That was great. And, chicken, things like that. So she grew her molars very quickly after trying those foods. So now that she has all of those teeth, things like cucumbers, things like raw apples, just sliced thin for her, are perfect. She really loves that. But anyway, so my next bullet point is avoiding adding spices and sugars to the baby's food. I briefly talked about this earlier. You just want them to taste the actual food, the food in its raw form, so that their senses and their tongue are not overstimulated, and they're not having, turning away from foods in their natural form because they're wanting it to be more sugary or more salty or whatever it is. Try to avoid those things. In addition, a lot of salt early on in their diet is not good for them. So that's huge. Just avoid those 2 things in the beginning as much as you can. Honey is a big no-no. You can look into this. I feel like it's pretty much everywhere. Whenever you go to search about baby food, it is very clear, but a big no-no until after 1 year old. There's something about their digestive system that is not developed correct or yet, to where they can't correctly process a certain bacteria that is in the honey. Don't quote me on that. I've taken in a lot of information in the last 16 months. That's kind of what I had gathered from it, but you can Google it yourself and look into it. But definitely avoiding honey until after 1 year old. Now my daughter is over 1 year old, and we're able to put honey in certain things like, I was talking about those date, desserts that I make. I add some honey to make it a vine, and she loves it. And we use honey on occasion if she's, not feeling well, with some ginger and lemon, and I mix all that together too. And so, yeah, honey, just avoid it until after 1 year old. Absolutely no questions about that. Okay, and I briefly talked about this earlier too, introducing 1 new food every couple days. This is in the beginning, whenever you're starting baby-led weaning, or purees should be the same too. But you don't want to give them a huge variety of foods. First of all, that's overloading, and they're just not going to be able to take it all in and know what's what and all of that. But introducing, literally just giving them like 2 things. Here are your 2 things, and this one you had 3 days ago, and then here's your new food, and keep it like that every couple of days until they get older, and you're able to see, okay, they didn't have allergic reactions to certain things, or that's the main thing. You want to monitor and avoid allergic reactions. There is an app. Again, this is going to be in my show notes, and I'll try to attach it at the bottom here too. But there's an amazing app that really helped for me and a couple other friends I know during this season for us, and it's called Solid Starts. I think they also have an Instagram with food recommendations and stuff like that. But Solid Starts was so helpful, because you could go on there, you could track what foods she had or he had, or if there were any reactions to it, if they liked it, if they didn't like it. And that's another thing. They might not like something the very first time, Give it a couple weeks or a couple months, and their taste buds are going to change and they're going to possibly like it again. So don't think, oh, they just hate vegetables. Like, try it again in a couple of weeks and see how it goes. So solid starts, not only can you track your food on there and be able to see what all baby has had, but it also has what I use it for, which I think is the most important feature on it. It tells you exactly how to serve the food based on your child's age. So as I stated earlier, cutting it appropriately in the correct size and shape is huge. That's going to be the number one thing when it comes to safely doing baby-led weaning. And most of the time they're long, thin strips. Sometimes they're small chunks, depending on the food, if it's like a good mushy food, but it changes age to age. So my daughter in the beginning could have apple slices that were steamed and they were thin, but now she's able to have bites of a whole apple and it's like no big deal. So it changes as they get older. And that has just been so helpful. Again, that app is Solid Starts. I'm not promoting this one by any means, but this is my personal experience with this app and it was so amazing. So check that out. In addition to how to correctly prepare it, it gives you nutritional facts, and that I thought was really helpful because I was trying to make sure that she was eating food with purpose. Everything she was eating hit certain nutritional values that I thought she needed in the beginning. So that was helpful too. But preparing it is key. And what I did before having this app, I literally Googled every single food I was serving to her, like how to serve eggs to a 9-month-old, or how to serve, I said apples a million times because that was one of her favorite, but how to serve apples to a 6-month-old. Like, these are things that you're going to Google and you're going to go through a million different pages to try to find. And there's going to be a bunch of different opinions probably, because some people are going to be like, put it in a puree. But this app helped me know exactly how to prepare it for her age. And they even have like pictures and I think videos of similar age kids eating it. So you can kind of see how it'll look ahead of time. Okay. When it comes to serving safely and being precautious about choking, I think it's so important to talk about the difference between gagging and choking. I, as well as a couple other parents I know, like, did not really understand the difference between these two. Whenever you hear your child kind of making a gagging sound, you automatically are like, they're choking, oh my gosh. But what they're actually doing, if they're making sound and they're trying to get the food back up, they are actually regulating what they should and should not be swallowing. And that's actually really helpful for them. And so obviously choking is a very big hazard. You want to avoid that at all costs, but if you're able to prepare the food correctly, make sure that you're serving it in the right shape and size, you should avoid choking altogether. Choking is where there's no sound or air coming out, there's discoloration, there's flailing of the limbs, terrifying things like that. And your immediate response could be to just bang on their back, but you really want to get them out, hang them down a little bit with, if you're not watching on YouTube, this is going to be kind of hard to explain, but you want their head to be lower than their bottom half of their body. So you can put their head in your hand, in the palm of your hand, have your arm arched down, and then just hit their back abruptly, trying to get the food to come out. So that, is my quick little spiel on how to help with choking, but I am not an expert. I would definitely recommend taking some type of CPR class, and just learning for yourself and regulating what you feel comfortable with. Don't give them anything that you think could be a choking hazard, obviously. But okay, back to gagging. Gagging is actually good regulation and is totally normal for them. And so in the beginning, I was like, not sure, and I would panic if and this was on even regular, like, mashed avocados, for instance, she would just like start gagging. That is totally normal. My daughter also had a tongue tie, so that was something that we experienced gagging with breast milk early on. My supply was, I had a large supply, so I kind of felt like I was like drowning her with my breast milk, but they talked to me about, the doctor and the dentist talked to me about how that was her trying to learn how to regulate and how to swallow properly with her tongue and lip tie, it was hard for her to do that. So that might be something you want to look into too. If your child is continuously gagging on foods, that might be a big one. But yeah, regular just gagging on something. They're mushing it up in their teeth or in their gums or their teeth, and then they try to swallow and then they gag it back up a little and they try again. And sometimes they'll spit it out and be like, nope, that wasn't for me. I'm not feeling that. Or sometimes they'll continue to just mash, 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 and then suddenly they're able to swallow. Totally normal. Okay, last one that is just pretty lighthearted in comparison to the conversation I just talked about and the point about safety. Safety is huge. That should not be taken lightly. If you have any other questions about it or you still feel uneasy, I highly recommend reaching out to, a trusted pediatrician or trusted friends and who have done baby-led weaning and asking them, how did you feel comfortable with this? What was the safe way to do that? Download that app, Solid Starts. I cannot push for that enough because that just saves you a lot of time. Everything you need for safety when it comes to their food is right there. And it tells you what foods to avoid and stuff. Okay. I said earlier, I was not promoting that app at all. I definitely should be though. If they hear me, shout out, hit me up. I would love to continue to promote this app because it's just so amazing. That's where I think if I'm ever gonna be paid promotion for anything, I want it to be things that I actually use in my everyday life. And I'm just like, this stuff is amazing. So Solid Starts is one of those things. Okay. Last lighthearted little bit is just what are some of your favorite baby-led weaning foods? And this is a fun part. This is when your little one is exploring with foods and you're getting to see their funny little faces whenever they try different textures and different flavors and stuff like that. So we started out with avocado slices. That was one of the first ones that she liked a lot in the beginning. And then she got to where she was like, but I don't like this. This is bland compared to the other foods I've had, I guess. And then she liked banana. This was something I would cut in long pieces so she could kind of hold it. And it's hilarious watching them just smush it between their fingers. And all of that part of the process is totally normal. I think sometimes parents are like, no, they're playing with it, they're throwing it, they're doing this and that. They need to be eating. Understand that starting at 6 months or so, you might have a month or a couple of months of them just exploring with it. And that is good. That's okay. Let them do that. They'll get to the point where they're like, okay, I'm eating to eat. And I think that's why it's helpful that if you introduce the solids around 6 or 7 months, whenever is appropriate for your child and their developmental skills, you have, about 5 months, depending on when you start, until that year when most parents stop breastfeeding or giving formula. Obviously, you can go longer. We're at 16 months. My daughter's still nursing, but she is now getting most of her nutrition from food. But you have that 5-6 month leeway period of where you're like, my child is getting nutrition from their milk still. They're not exactly needing the nutrition from food. So it's okay that they're playing and wasting and exploring with it. But once they get to that year point when you're going to cut out milk, or, if it's later, whenever it is for you, that is when food needs to be eaten. So it's good to introduce it a little bit sooner so that they have that time to play. Okay. The bananas with the mushing in the beginning, where she would just hold the slices of it, was funny and great. And she enjoyed that. But I actually looked up and learned that you could give them like a little, it's like you cut off maybe 2/3 of the banana to where you're just holding the end of the banana and you just do the peel back a little bit, and they have a little bit of the actual banana poking out from the peel, and then they can hold the peel themselves. And that is a really good way for them to get used to holding and eating. And so, yeah, that's a different way you can do it too. Steamed sweet potato chunks. Oh, this was her fave for a while. And then something about the shape, just she needed it changed up. And then I started giving her like halves of sweet potato where she could just dig into it on her own. So sweet potato is a good favorite for a while. Scrambled eggs or omelet strips. That was really helpful because I would make my husband and I an omelet in the morning, and I was able to put a lot of veggies in there. I was able to put spinach and mushrooms and onions and tomatoes. Again, don't mix all of those foods together in the very beginning. You want to introduce one new food every couple of days. So this was after she had tried all of those foods on their own. And then I was able to put them in an omelet, and then you just give her little strips. She can hold them, eat them, and it was really good for her. Also, eggs is one of those that people are weary of because of allergies. My quick personal experience on what I learned about allergies from our pediatrician and trusted advisors is that yes, you want to be monitoring and try to avoid any allergic reaction, but if you don't introduce your child to those things at some point, then they're more likely to develop an allergy to it. So we were not super afraid of introducing things like eggs or nut butters, things like that. We just did them when we felt it was appropriate, and we solely had that as something that they were eating. And it was a little bit like, here's a little taste of an egg, or here's a little bit of nut butter on your lip. And then the next couple days, we would do, okay, here's a little bit of peanut butter on a toast strip. How does she do with this? Okay, then after that, building up and really monitoring was helpful for the allergies and making sure that she didn't have any, which thank God she didn't. But I think there's something big to be said. And again, this is not my words. This is coming from our pediatrician and our trusted doctors and advisors. They told us that if you were to wait until way longer, like over a year and so, to introduce these things, that they might actually develop an allergy to it. So don't be super afraid of it. Just be cautious, be monitoring, and be aware of what's in things. I'm not giving her the foods that have a lot of mixed ingredients. Instead, I was simply introducing those things one at a time and in small portions and building it up, and she's been totally fine. So that's my little thing about allergies and foods. Okay, and the last couple of foods that she loves is orange slices. This is still a good go-to. I just love those little cuties. We just throw one in the bag, and she can easily eat those now on her own. In the beginning, I think there was a certain way I had to cut them up. So those are nice and good. And then another huge one is blueberries. My girl loves blueberries. And the best thing about those is you can get them frozen and just pour them in some warm water and let them thaw, which is what I do now. I'm hoping there's still the same nutritional value. I've heard from doctors and people that there is, but then I've also heard the other argument that there's not. So I don't know, but it's easy because they're nice and small in the frozen form. And then you just thaw them out and you can mix them into anything. And she really loves blueberries. So that was, like I said previously, I made her a homemade smash cake. And it was just made with blueberries and bananas and almond flour and things like that. And her icing was just made out of blueberries and a cream. I think I didn't do any type of sugar. Oh, I did date syrup is what I did for the sweetness of it. But yeah, anyways, okay. Those are some of our favorite foods. I would love to hear about what your child's favorite foods are. Sending or commenting, whatever platform you're on here, sending or commenting with pictures of what kind of foods your baby's trying. I just love seeing all the new foods that babies are trying out there. I have a friend who has done so great with Baby-Led Weaning, and I think her kid tried like 70 foods or something by the time he was 1, and it was just so awesome. But yeah, comment below. Let me know what your kid's trying. Let me know if you have any questions. If I said anything that you're just like, I'm still scared about this, or I still don't know about this, I'm here for you. Reach out to me, reach out to your trusted tribe and a trusted pediatrician. I think that's huge. Doctors, just like people, are going to have differing opinions, but you need to make sure that the one that you're following and listening to is someone that you actually trust with your child's health. I think sometimes we just say, well, they're a doctor, we should trust them. They're a person as well, and there are differing opinions amongst pediatricians. So find a trusted pediatrician or trusted advisor that you can turn to. And I hope that your baby-led weaning journey is amazing, just as ours was. On the blog that I told you could check out in the show notes, I'll have some great pictures of my little lady trying out all these different fun foods, her different reactions to them. just a mess of food all the time, all over her face. And on my social media platforms, you can check out some fun pictures on there too. And that's where I would love if you share your pictures of your babies too. Alrighty, guys, I hope y'all have an amazing weekend, and I look forward to talking to you more next week. Bye.